Yo, 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 yo. What's up, guys? How's it going tonight? How we doing? How we doing? How we doing? Happy Halloween! Happy Halloween! Hope you guys are doing good. Today we're talking about how to retire early. This topic isn't touched on enough, right? How do we as entrepreneurs set ourselves up for retirement early, right? That's what we want to do. Pensions don't exist anymore, right? Unless you're working or in the military or a post office, or you work for the government. Pensions are hard to find nowadays. There are retirement accounts like 401ks, different investment strategies that will help you over time. But yo, what's up? What's up, Gucci? How's it going, man? Oh, thanks, brother. Yeah, it was Mario night in my house, so I was Donkey Kong. This is my wife's hat. She was Mario, my son was Baby Mario, and my dog was Luigi. So we were rolling pretty deep in the Mario world tonight. And now everyone's asleep, so I'm just talking real estate tonight. You have a good night? Do anything cool? Cool with the family? Yeah, I followed you last night too, brother. Hopefully you can get that affiliate soon. I know you're pretty close. But yeah, guys, like I was saying, there are not a lot of jobs out there that offer pensions, right? So how do we, as entrepreneurs, set ourselves up for possibly retiring early, right? That's the goal that everybody wants to strive for. Oh, nice job, man. Congrats on that. Nice, man. Good to hear that. Cobra, thanks for the like. Why do monsters eat ghosts? Because they taste like bed sheets? That's not what you did there, man. That's funny, bro. You funny. So like Cobra, my man Cobra right here, right? Just dropping a joke, right? Maybe he's a stand-up comedian. Maybe he's self-employed. How is this man going to set himself up for retirement, right? I don't know anything about stand-up comedians, but I'm assuming they're all self-employed. And they have to continue to be funny year after year after year in order for that income to keep coming in, right? So my man Cobra over here who's dropping jokes, he's got to grind out those jokes year after year after year. And then he's going to get taxed severely because he's an entrepreneur. He's self-employed, right? So my man Cobra here, the money that he makes, he should set aside for, the stock market, savings, or possibly investing in real estate. And that's kind of what we were talking about last night is my man Gucci over here, we were talking about subject 2 of the existing mortgage, right? Like how can you buy a property without having to get a conventional loan? Pick your brain, but yeah. How can you buy a house without having to apply for a loan through a bank, right? Because when you apply for a loan through a bank, they're going to look at your debt to income. They're going to look at your work history. They're going to just really kind of underwrite everything, your credit score, right? So if you're an entrepreneur and if you're a content creator, streamer, right, there's not a lot of work history to go off of. So it's going to be very hard to get approved for a conventional loan through a bank, right? So do you have YouTube out, some sort of platform we can communicate? Dude, yeah, just message me through here, man. I have a Discord. I'll link the Discord to the chat, right? There we go. Is that my Discord? Maybe? I don't know. I think so. All right. So we're talking about if you're a content creator, like say your main source of income is streaming, right? So you're self-employed. You go to the bank. You want to buy a house. They are going to look to see if you've been doing this job for consistent year, like more than 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, right? They want to see that you're consistently making this income before they're going to approve you for a loan. That's why it's a lot easier for people to get approved for a loan that have a W-2, right? Like you work for a corporation, you work for like a Fortune 500 company, you have an offer letter, right? That's almost a guarantee that, hey, this person gets paid X amount every year. Here's proof, here's the offer letter, underwrite based off of that salary, right? So we're living in an entrepreneurial type world right now where it's hard to get qualified for a mortgage because we're all self-employed, myself included. I'm self-employed too, and I have 4 rentals, so I can speak to at length with this stuff. But what I'll tell you is there are more ways to buy a property opposed to just applying for a conventional loan in a bank, right? So my man Gucci, who's my friend on Twitch, appreciate you, brother. Shout out to you, bro. We were talking about subject to yesterday, subject to the existing mortgage, right? So when we talk about subject to, we're talking about there's already a mortgage in place with the seller that, you know, a property that you're interested in buying. The seller that's selling that property has a mortgage on it, right? How can you, the buyer, take over that mortgage, right? That the mortgage will still stay in the seller's name, right, through an agreement, a trust, or whatever the tool is. But you're responsible for making those payments, right? So that's one way we were talking about yesterday on how to purchase a property without having to go through a conventional bank, without having to go through all the red tape of applying for a loan, right? So when we talk about subject to, there needs to be a lot of clarity when it comes to both parties, right? The seller needs to know that the loan is going to stay in his name, right? Like after it closes, after you take possession of the property, the seller is going to continue to have that note on his name. He has to know that, has to understand that, right? There are certain circumstances where people are not going to buy another house and they don't care. They just want to sell it. They want to be done with it, and they can't sell it on the market with a realtor because it's not worth what they bought it for, right? So the one good thing about subject to is you can acquire someone's mortgage without having going through a bank, going through the whole process of applying for a loan. The risk of that is that you might not be able to make those payments, right? Like if you don't make those payments, then guess what? The seller can foreclose on you, right? He can take the property back from you. So if you're gonna buy a home, you need to make sure that you have enough money to pay the mortgage every month, and you also need to have enough money to take care of repairs, right? Because all houses have issues. Don't matter if they're new or if they're old, you're gonna have issues, and it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, right? So you want to make sure that you have the income and the savings to take care of those repairs, right? So if you're making a lot of money, say you are a successful streamer 2024, right? You made over $100,000 on paper, right? And you want to buy a property. You buy an asset, you buy a rental property. You can then use that rental property to offset some of that income that you made as a streamer, right? So if you made over $100,000 as a streamer, gross, you bought a property for like $250,000, you put maybe $15,000 into it as far as repairs, you can cost segregate some of those items as far as repairs to save money when it comes to paying your taxes each year. And that's what I really love about real estate is you can shelter that income that you make every year, and you can spend that money to buy real estate that has shown proof of appreciating year over year, right? Like you're going to have repairs, you're going to have issues, but you're also going to have an asset that is a hard asset. It's not a digital asset, it's not a stock, it's a hard asset that's on land that has shown history of appreciating year over year over year. And that's what it that's why it's been around for centuries, right? So you want to buy right, you want to make sure that you're saving for retirement, and you're not going to get a pension as a content creator. Twitch isn't offering pensions. No one's offering pensions unless you work for the government. So how do you create your own pension? You create it through, in my example, I create it through owning assets, owning rental properties, owning a property that's getting paid off by a tenant that's in the property, paying the rent, paying the mortgage down while it's appreciating year over year, and growing my nest egg for retirement. That way, whenever I'm in my 50s, I'll have multiple properties that are already paid off, right? That are being rented, that are cash flowing, where I can retire and I don't have to worry about, where my money's coming from when I'm 50, 60, 70 years old. Like I'll have hard assets that will be paying me when I'm retired. And that's something that unfortunately isn't talked about enough in this country, man. Like, my homie Gucci lives in Arkansas. I live in Texas. I can guarantee you they don't teach that in those states, right? I didn't learn about it in Texas. I didn't learn about anything about financial literacy. I didn't learn anything about real estate in the public school system, right? So it's not being taught, and there's reasons for that, right? There's reasons why it's not being taught, because taxes, right? Like, people need to pay their taxes. Taxes is what makes the world go around in this country. And if we have people sheltering taxes, then you have less money going to the government, less money for government spending, whatever, this and that, right? So real estate, in my opinion, is one of, not the best, but one of the best ways to set yourself up for retirement. And like my homie over here, Cobra, who's a stand-up comedian, this man's got to keep grinding it out. Year over year after year of jokes in the chat, needs to be making money. And that money that he makes, he needs to save, right? He needs to buy a house that eventually will pay him in cash flow. Or else he's going to be telling jokes until he's 90. So that's kind of a quick touch up on my thoughts on real estate, on how you can prepare for retirement, because that's what we're all working for, guys. I know I sound like a broken record. There's just new people coming in here. So we're talking about saving and retiring early, right? And what is early, right? Like, the earlier you start, the earlier you can retire, right? So if you're in like your early 20s and you're a streamer, a content creator, you're doing well, start saving that money. Start thinking about buying real estate. And my job is to help people understand the different ways of how you can buy real estate, right? Not just the traditional way of going through a bank and applying for a loan. Like, there are different ways that you can acquire real estate through an LLC, subject to seller financing. There's just lease to own. There's so many different strategies that you can do and you can execute to buy property. I mean, you could type in wholesale in TikTok and you'll find tons of people talking about wholesaling. Type in subject to in YouTube, you'll find Pace Morby and all of his people talking about subject to. Like, these are a lot of popular strategies on how to build wealth and acquire real estate. And then once you have the real estate, then you can sell the real estate down the road after it's appreciated, which then you can buy more real estate and use and not have to pay taxes on the money that you've made over the years, right? Because you're reinvesting it into the same type of asset class. So capital gains is the term that I was drawing a blank on. So you're not having to pay capital gains when you're purchasing like-kind assets. So that's the quick summary on how to retire early through real estate. All right, I'm yapping. But you know, this is my job. This is what I do for a living, guys. I am a real estate investor and I'm also a realtor. So I help people buy homes to live in, but my main focus is helping people buy homes to help them retire early, right? For other people to live in, other people to pay down your mortgage, other people to rent, providing shelter. I mean, you know, like you're providing shelter also. Now there are some risks, okay? Like I'm sure my friend over here, Gucci, can tell you that houses have issues, right? Whenever you buy a house, you're gonna have issues, whether that be plumbing leaks, broken windows, roof leaks, foundation shifts. There's so many things, right? So that's part of it, right? Now you can work with your CPA and, you know, account for some of these repairs, expenses that you have that will help you during tax time. But ultimately, you know, you're going to need money to pay for these things. So from the cash flow that you're getting from rentals, you want to save that. Now, as you get closer to paying it off, you can start, you know, potentially living off of it. But initially, anything you make on a rental, as far as cash flow, you want to save it, because you know that if you've ever rented anywhere, you don't take as much care of that rental as you would your own place, right? Because it's a rental. If you ever stayed at a hotel, you know, you're not over there like vacuuming the floor, right? You're not like cleaning the place because you know that you're there for a short amount of time. Well, the same thing works for rentals. And if you're a landlord, you know that when they move out, there's going to be a lot of issues, deferred maintenance, you know. Deferred maintenance on a HVAC, you know how many times I've seen that? Every time I have a tenant that moves out, the first thing that gets taken care of is the HVAC. Because they don't change the filter, they run it super cold, right? So if you have an HVAC that's older, you can guarantee that you're going to have to spend some money to get that replaced, right? And even if you sell the property too, like they're going to do an inspection and they're going to call you out on that. They're like, hey, this HVAC is on its last leg. We're going to need you to replace it. So you're going to pay for it one way or another. So you might as well save the money that you're making on the rental as far as cash flow. Don't spend it, because a lot of people, what they do is like, oh, I can live off cash flow. I can like retire now and I can just leave my job and just live off cash flow. Like, no, you cannot do that. You just cannot do it. You cannot do it, because when things go wrong and you don't have any money to pay for it, then you start getting into debt. And when you start getting into debt, your interest on the debt continues just to crush you, right? So you want to make sure that you can pay for things, right? Now, credit is good. Don't get me wrong. Credit is really good. It'll help you buy things that you don't have cash for. But, you know, when you're using credit, like business credit or lines of credit, you want to make sure you have a plan to pay that back. Because if you don't have a plan to pay that back within a short amount of time, then the interest is going to destroy you, right? Like, I have over $100,000 in credit lines, right? And initially, it was much less than that. I learned some hard lessons on spending and being able to pay back, and I paid a lot of money in interest. So trust me, guys, when I'm talking to you about this, like, it's credit lines and business credit's easy to get, you know, but it is hard to not overspend because it's just so tempting, right? When you see that you have that amount of credit that you can use, you're like, oh, okay, well, I can go ahead and buy this and I can buy that and I can just, you know, pay it back eventually. Well, eventually will never come if you don't have a plan to actually pay it back, right? So that's kind of like my 2 cents on a rental. If you're having cash flow, right, don't spend it, save it for repairs. That way you don't get into a hole financially with credit. Okay, anyone have business credit? lines of credit? Anyone? Anyone have business credit or lines of credit? I know as a streamer, there are certain things that you could classify as like office supplies, right? Like your computer, your tech, things that you use to run a business. Because essentially, like when you're a streamer, you're running a business. Your business is this is your business, right? Now you're self-employed, so you're gonna get taxed. Like being self-employed is very expensive when it comes to tax time. So that's my whole point, guys, is I'm talking about this because I try to look out for fellow streamers that, you know, are making a lot of money in streaming and they're spending a lot of money and they don't have enough money to pay taxes. And then heaven forbid, right? Like if you're really good at something when it comes to streaming, like this game, for example, Call of Duty, if you're really good at Call of Duty and then next year they change it completely and you're not good at it, then you don't have the income that you were making the previous year. And how are you going to pay your taxes from the previous year if you're not making the same money that you previously were, right? So that's why saving your money is so important, because you just don't know if things are going to change, and things are most likely going to change. I mean, think about this game, right? Call of Duty. It's changed so much over the last couple decades. You know, I started playing this game back in like 2008, right? When the first Modern Warfare came out on like PlayStation 3. And now we're here at 2024. We're here on PS5, and it's similar, but it's not similar. So, and you know, I'm also older now. I was in college back then. I mean, I'm in my 30s now, so I am not as good as I once was. And that's neither here nor there, right? So, how do we account for the change, right? If we're making a lot of money streaming on a podcast, whatever it is, how do we account for the unknown, right? Like let's take the Hawk Tuah girl, for example, right? Like she got super famous from pretty much overnight, right? And now she's taken steps to continue receiving income, right? Through a podcast, through, you know, whatever other platforms she can stay relevant on, right? So in my opinion, she's doing everything right to continue going on this journey that she's going on. But like, what happens next year when there's another Hawk Tuah girl out there, right? There's another Hawk Tuah girl out there that has a different saying. And if you're not relevant, right? If you don't have the podcast that's doing well, if you're not making money the same way you've been making money, then you have a problem. So if I was the Hawk Tuah girl, I would be probably looking to buy some real estate right now with the money that she's made. That way, I know I have hard assets that will appreciate over time, that maybe I can get some rental, I can get some tenants to pay rent, pay the mortgage down, right, as the value increases, and continue to tax shelter my earned income, because she's self-employed now, right? She's self-employed. She's not working a W-2, so I'm sure she's going to get taxed heavily for 2024 for all the money that she's made, right? So if I were her, I would be buying real estate. And I bet you anything, if any of you follow her, she's going to talk about that. She is going to talk about she just bought a property in, you know, wherever. And that's the reason why. It's because she's trying to shelter as much of her income that she's made this year as possible. So that's kind of how the rich stay rich, right? Like people that make a lot of money, they protect it. And unfortunately, they just don't teach that in school, right? They don't teach you financial literacy. They don't teach you about taxes, right? They don't teach you about real estate. They don't teach you really any of these things that can help you in everyday life. They're teaching you about polygons and triglycerides and photosynthesis, right? But are they teaching you about how to stay out of debt? How to have financial literacy? these are important things that we need to know, right? As citizens, as people that pay taxes, we need to know what resources and tools are available to us. And how do we do that? Well, we have to go talk to people. We have to go find people that are doing well in life. And that's kind of how I got started, right? Like, I got started because I talked to people that are doing well, that have multiple rentals, multiple investment properties, and they don't pay taxes because they're taking paper losses each year on real estate. And from 2020 to 2024, I was able to acquire 4 different rentals, right? 2 short-term rentals and 2 long-term rentals. And they've been tough because they were older, right? So there's been a lot of repairs. That's why I'm talking about saving money for repairs. But also, they've been helping me out save money during tax time because I'm a real estate professional, and there's certain verbiage in the tax code that's beneficial to real estate professionals, and also have a good CPA, right? So as I continue to hold the properties, the value increases, and if I'm able to hold longer term, then that will set me up for retirement early, right? So if I'm like in my 40s and I have 3 or 4 different properties that are almost paid off from tenants that have been renting there, that means that when I reach 50, I should have all assets free and clear, generating monthly income that I can live off of and essentially be retired and enjoy the rest of however many years I have left. So that's one way to do it, guys. Okay, that's one way to do it. I advise you guys to look into it, especially if you're doing very well as a entrepreneur. Right? Entrepreneurs are self-employed, and each year is different. I mean, look at what's this guy's name? Oh, Only Use Me Blade. I don't know if you guys have heard of this streamer. He was big back whenever I was playing Modern Warfare. I mean, he had over like 600,000 subscribers on YouTube, and this is before streaming was a thing. And he made some poor choices and pretty much lost it all, and now has to like pretty much get drunk on a live stream every night just to make money, right? So odds are that his health is not very good and his life expectancy isn't very good. So you know, these are just decisions, the poor decisions that people make, and they don't take into account the future. Right? Like, I'm sure, like, he doesn't have a family. He talked about it. Like, he wanted a family. A lot of his friends are, you know, married, have kids, and he's still, you know, drinking Jaeger every night, trying to get gifted subs or get donations. Like, that's not something maybe he wants, but I don't know if the majority of people out there want to live like that, right? So my whole point is, you know, right now, right? If you're young, if you're in your early 20s, maybe you're fresh out of high school, and let's say you're a successful streamer, you're doing really well, start saving your money, right? If you have enough money to buy real estate, then you should start now, because the sooner you start, the sooner that asset will appreciate in value, the sooner you can get a tenant in there to pay your mortgage, right? And then that's how you build your portfolio. Banks will see that you own assets that are actually being serviced, and they'll lend you money to buy another asset, right? Another rental property. So that's how the rich continue to get richer, and the earlier you start, the better off you'll be. Trust me on that. All right, I've yapped a lot here on real estate. Does anyone have any preguntas, any questions? Any questions about how to buy their first property? Any questions on how to fix and flip a home? Any questions on how to wholesale? Any questions on subject to the existing mortgage, right? Like any questions on real estate investing? Any questions on how to retire early? Because you see a lot of people getting donations and gifts and making a lot of money, right? But how do you keep that money? How do you maintain that wealth? Right? Because you could have a good 2024, but are you going to have a good 2025? What if like the next Hawk Tuah girl comes here and, you know, Like the previous Hawk girl has no platform because there's someone new that has replaced her, right? So like you don't want to be in that situation, which I'm willing to bet that girl is probably going to buy real estate this year to shelter some of the money that she's made, because she's probably made a lot of money, right? So that's my advice, guys. You want to retire early? Get started early. How do you get started early? Well, it doesn't come free, right? Like you got to work, and if you're making money streaming, then that's one way of work. If you're a realtor like I am, that's another way. If you're have your own business, you know, like there's all these different ways to make money, and it's what you do with that money that you make that will set you up for your future, right? So everyone wants to retire early. Companies don't have pensions anymore. There's no such thing as a pension, right? Not outside of like government type service jobs, military, you know, like pensions are very, very rare nowadays. So how do we set our own pension up, right? Well, we buy assets that appreciate over time and that pay us whenever we stop working our day job. And how does that happen? Well, we need to start investing now. The sooner, the better, right? And especially right now, because with real estate right now, now this is just my market. I'm not talking about, you know, specific markets. I'm just talking about like in my area, sellers are having a hard time selling their houses, right? They're not selling for what they were a few years ago. So it's actually a really good opportunity for people that are looking to buy to get in, to get an asset under, you know, potentially market value, right? And why is that important? Well, it's important because if you buy a property under market value, you stand a greater chance of seeing appreciation skyrocket over time, especially if you have it under market value, right? So if you buy a house that's worth $400,000 and you buy it for $300,000, right? So you already have in the bank size $100,000 worth of equity because you bought a house under market value, right? So that's kind of what you should be looking at. How can I buy under market value? And then when I buy the house, how do I get someone else to pay this mortgage, to pay my overhead? That way I don't have to pay for the overhead on this asset, right? So that's the next step, is finding a tenant, finding someone, you know, maybe it's a short-term rental, mid-term rental, finding someone to pay that mortgage down every month. You find someone to pay that mortgage down every month, then if there's any excess cash flow is what it's called. If there's any cash flow, save it. Save it for repairs, right? Because you're going to have an HVAC that goes out. You're going to have maybe a roof that leaks. You're going to have a foundation that cracks or shifts. You know, you're going to have problems. So you want to save money for that. And when you save money for that, it's best to save money from that asset, right? So when I say that, I mean saving money from the cash flow that you're receiving. And most likely you're not receiving a lot of cash flow. You're receiving maybe like $200 to $300 a month, you know, so that's going to be that's going to cover one repair. That's going to cover one repair, but at least you paid the repair out of the cash flow of the asset and not out of your pocket, right? So over time, as you have the house rented and you know, the mortgage is getting paid down, the property is increasing in value, you're setting yourself up for a retirement vehicle. So whenever you are at retirement age, you have an asset that's producing income while you're retired. And that's my whole point of this long-winded conversation, is save your money, invest in retirement, because it's coming, right? You might be young right now. You might be 20, but pretty soon you'll be in your 30s, and you will be so surprised to see how much homes are worth in your 30s compared to what they're worth right now. Right? It's only going to go up. Things are only getting more expensive. So the sooner you start, the better off you're going to be in the future, because things are just going to continue to get more expensive. I mean, it's inevitable. Look at the last 100 years, right? Like, look at like the 80s. Like, homes were significantly less. I mean, of course, wages were less, but you can see the trend. It's going to continue to be this way, right? So, assets, real estate have been around for centuries, and that's something that, isn't really tied to the dollar. Like, it has a value on its own. No matter what the dollar does, like, it's a hard asset that's in the ground, that provides shelter, that's a necessity, which you should be investing in necessities, right? Like, you need to kind of keep that in mind as where you put your money. Like, what do people absolutely need to survive? And housing is one of those things. It's something that I understand very well. I don't understand stocks very well, but I understand real estate. And my whole point of starting this channel, and of course I'm playing Call of Duty, but I'm not very good at it, so you're not really missing much here. The whole point of starting this channel and conversation is to help people like you guys that are streamers, that are interested in being an entrepreneur, to keep your money, right? Because the more money that you can save each year, you can use that money to invest in something, that will be set up for your retirement, right? Like a rental property, or stocks, or an index fund. For me, I've invested in real estate. I've invested in multiple rentals from 2020 to 2024 currently, and those mortgages have been being paid by the renters that are in those homes. And any excess money that I make, I save it, and I use that money to fix the home up, because after every tenant leaves, there's always repairs and things that you need to get done, and you don't want to come out of pocket to do that. So how do I not come out of pocket? Well, if there's any cash flow, I save it, and I save it for those repairs, because believe there will be repairs. It's inevitable. It's inevitable. It's just part of it. Like, there are plenty of different ways to prepare for retirement, but there's also risk, and I haven't found anything that has zero risk. Every investment has a risk, right? So it's understand. Hey, LGQ, thanks for the likes. I appreciate it. Thanks, man. The risk is in every investment, no matter what it is. So the best thing you can do is understand the risk, right? Like, so for real estate, the risk is, there's a couple things, right? The risk is not being able to afford the mortgage, the property losing its value, and that typically happens in the short term. Historically, real estate only goes up, and I honestly think it will continue to go up, just because the lack of land, and the housing shortage. I mean, overall, there's a huge shortage in residential real estate. So we know the risks, right? We know that there's repairs that are involved. So we need to make sure that we find a good deal, right? And how do we find a good deal? Well, you can work with realtors, you can work with wholesalers, you can work with a lot of different people that can help you find a good deal. That way you're not, buying an asset that isn't worth the money that you're going to spend on it, right? So that's one of the most important things, is buying right. You want to buy You want to buy a property that's, you know, good in value, that's going to rent and cash flow, right? It's going to show signs of appreciation. So you want to buy in a good market. You want to, you know, buy something that is also not going to need like hundreds of thousands of dollars of repairs. Unless you're going to improve the property, then, you know, that's something different too. Does anyone have a rental property? This dude has smoke, man. This smoke is crazy. You know, if you have a rental property, and you understand what I'm talking about, right? I'm dead. Look at these guys over here, man. Crazy. Bunch of campers, bro. So how do we know if we're buying a good deal, right? Like that's kind of, well, we need to make sure that the area that we're buying in has shown through like previous sales of increased value that the rents are enough to cover what your mortgage payment is, right? Or at least a majority of it. Those are two just quick things that I would look into, right? So if I'm going to buy a home for $300,000 and it's going to cost me like $2,000 every month to pay the mortgage, the insurance, the taxes, and the interest, then I want to make sure that I have a tenant in there that is going to pay, you know, $2,000 at least in rent. At least, because there's also, this map sucks. There's also, you know, property management fees. There's lawn care. There's all these different things that, you know, you might have to pay as a landlord, and, you know, you just have to know that it's part of it. God, this map is terrible, bro. Oh my gosh. So that's how we buy right. I just had a question where someone asked, how do I know if I'm buying a good deal? Well, that's how we know if we're buying a good deal, right? Like, if we're buying at a price where, you know, it could be under market value as a good start. Does the rent pay my overhead? And goodness. So, like, how do we know if we're buying right? Did you guys catch that, what I just mentioned? This map is so bad, dude. I can't stand this map, bro. Let's see. What's going on? No, not this one. It's weird. All right, so we're talking about how to retire early. Does anyone have a rental property? Anyone? I'm on Twitch, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Kick, on YouTube, and we're talking about the best way to save your money, retire early, because if you're an entrepreneur in this country, it is hard, right? If you're self-employed, very difficult to continue to make money and save money. So how do we protect the money that we make each year, especially if we're entrepreneurs or self-employed, is we have to invest that money. You can save, but ultimately you want that money to make you more money, right? And the only way for that to happen is you have to invest the money, right? So what do we invest in? Well, there's quite a few different investment strategies, right? I'm not a financial planner, but I am a real estate professional, and that's the vehicle that I've chosen is residential real estate for its tax benefits, for the appreciation over the years, and for retirement, right? Like you're looking to have something pay you when you're done working, and there are very few jobs that have pensions out there. I mean, they're almost extinct. If it's not for the government, then most likely it doesn't have a pension, right? So how do we create our own pension? Well, we need to invest in something that will pay us when we're older. That way we don't have to continue to be playing Call of Duty until we're 70 years old, right? I mean, these streamers that are making a lot of money right now, that's great, but what happens when the game changes, right? What happens when streaming is no longer the way to make money. It's something different. And a good example of that is if you look at YouTubers from like the early 2000s, like 2005, 2006, a lot of those guys are gone. They just couldn't pivot with the change, right? Like back in the early YouTube days, guys were making gameplay videos, and there are some guys that are still out there that are still doing okay, but the majority of them fell off because of the shift on how technology changed and how things changed, how to make money in this digital world, right? So right now people are streaming, and there's a lot more people streaming now than there was a few years ago, right? So not everybody's like pulling in 20K a month like Dr. Disrespect, right? Like most people that are streaming right now are small time, and the people that are actually making a lot of money streaming, are they doing what's necessary to keep that money, right? Save that money, invest the money, because who knows next year, are they going to be at the same level? Is the game going to change? Like this Call of Duty game changes every year, right? Now they've added this Omni movement in here. So it's different, right? The maps are different. So every year it changes, and people that are good at the previous game, are they going to be good at the next game? That's why you see all these people that are really good, they're just grinding the game right upon release, right? Even changing their service address so they can download it early to get an edge, because that's how competitive streaming video games is for a living, right? Like the people that are really good at video games, they need to stay at that level. And as you get older, you're not as quick anymore, right? Like I'm already closer to 40. Whenever I was in my early 20s, I was really good at video games. Now I'm like way behind. So that's going to happen to everyone eventually, right? As you get older, things slow down. That's just the way of life is. So from whenever you're at your peak to whenever you start declining, have you done things to set yourself up for retirement? And that's the whole point of my stream, my podcast, whatever you want to call it. I'm here to help people set up for retirement through real estate and save their money and use that money to make the money, right? That's the goal. And people charge course, take my course, do this and that. I don't charge anything, man. I'm just happy that people even show up to watch, right? Like that's good enough for me. I've made my money in real estate. I have assets, so I can speak to you on how to build a real estate portfolio, because I have real estate. I own real estate. I am a landlord. I have multiple properties that make passive income. But what I'll tell you about it is you can't live off of it right away because of all these things that I spoke about, right? So for those of you that are just joining in, there are certain things that will happen eventually. It's not if, it's when, right? And with real estate, it's repairs, right? Or it could be tenants not paying rent, right? So you need to save. You cannot spend the money that you're making on cash flow to live off of. Not initially. You need to save it for rainy days. And then once the assets have appreciated over time and they're worth a lot more than what you paid for, that's when you start really seeing the acceleration of your wealth built, right? So I'm here to kind of lay out things that I would do going, if I could start back over, what I would change and what I wouldn't change. And if there's any questions that people have about how to buy real estate with a loan going non-conventional, maybe you want to do seller financing, or you want to go subject to take over someone's mortgage. There's different ways that you can buy real estate, and I'm here to help people understand how to do that, right? So feel free to ask any questions you have, because I'm losing my voice and I'm talking about the same thing over and over and over again. Caleb, bro, you hit me with the spam again, brother. Have you been saving your money, Caleb? Right? Because I mean, how many of these spam messages do you have to send consistently to make money, right? So if this is your main job, Caleb, is to spam and get people to go and join your thing, you need to consistently do that every year, right? Like to consistently make the money that you're making this year, you want to make the same money next year. So you're going to be spamming year after year, month after month, day after day. So how do you stop spamming? Well, you start saving that money that you're making off of your spamming, right? So as you spam, like you just spammed me, so you're going to continue to spam other people. You want to save the money that you make, invest that in a real a retirement strategy. Like real estate is the main topic of discussion, right? So as you keep spamming people, you can start putting that money away towards real estate, and it'll appreciate over time. That way, whenever you're 40, 50 years old, you don't have to spam anymore, right? You can stop spamming, and you can retire, and you can let that real estate pay your living. 1 second, guys. I'll be right back. All right, guys. Sorry, my son was waking up, so I had to go tend to him. But see, Caleb, I gave you that advice free, man. Most people out there would charge for that kind of advice, but I gave it to you for free. So, I'm here to help you guys. Because I just started this stream, right? I started this stream to help other entrepreneurs, other self-employed people that are trying to, start their own business, make money without having to work a 9 to 5, right? So that's my goal, is to help people like you. Like, I'm sure that there are a lot of other people that are watching streams that want to start their own stream and be self-employed, be their own boss, right? But how do we continue to do that year after year? That's the question, right? We want to continue to make money, right? No matter what happens. And say the streaming stops, right? Like people, like, streaming is not the way to make money anymore. Well, then what, right? Well, if you're smart, you've invested in some sort of retirement vehicle whenever you were making money. That way, if the landscape changes on you, you at least have assets that are going to appreciate in value over time. And for me, real estate has done that. Real estate appreciates over time historically. It's a hard asset. It's not a digital asset. So, it exists, and it has shown to appreciate in value. It also provides shelter, right? So that's another thing, is people will always need places to live. There's a shortage of housing out there in the United States. So my investment vehicle is investing in real estate. Now, when you invest in real estate, it gets expensive. It can if you know, buy wrong or if you have a lot of repairs that you have to deal with, which eventually you will. Like if you buy new, right away you won't, but you know, if you buy a property, like for me, for example, I have 3 properties that were all built before 1990. I've had a lot of issues with those properties, but I have seen some pretty good appreciation on all 3 of them, all 4 of them, and I can tell you that the longer you hold, the better off you're going to be, right? So the key is to hold on for as long as you can. And how do we hold on, right? Well, we need to get a tenant in there to pay your mortgage, to pay your overhead, right? So that has to be at the forefront of your mind, right? When you buy a property, you need to make sure that you can find someone that can pay that mortgage or pay the majority of it. That way, when you're working, you don't have to spend your own money to service that loan, right? So that would be my advice. If you're making money right now and you're self-employed or you're an entrepreneur, start investing in your retirement. And the retirement is as early as you want it to be, right? But one thing is for certain, it doesn't happen right away, right? Like you have to start right away in order for retirement to get here sooner. That's the key, is to start as soon as possible. Right? So how do we start as soon as possible? Well, as we make money right now in 2024, oh my gosh, bro, are you serious? As we make money in 2024, we want to start saving that money. And when we save that money, we want to use that money for, potential investment, right? Because we want that money that we're saving to pay us in the future. And how do we get that money to pay us in the future? We invest it. And in order to invest it, we need to find out the right asset, right vehicle to put that money towards, because it is far better to put that money towards something than to just put it in the bank and let it sit, because inflation will eat it away and it's inevitable. Like, what was that? Shooting me with that shit. I can't hear anything. So inflation will eat away your savings. What is... Inflation will eat away your savings, right? That's just... What is that? Who wants to retire early? Who wants to know how to retire early through real estate? Ask any question you want to ask. No charge, free advice. Not really advice, just my sharing my experience. I mean, you know that you gotta pay for stuff like this, man. This is all for free right now. I know it's late, so there's not a lot of people looking for real estate advice this hour at night, but I mean, it's your lucky night. Giving this stuff out for free. Giving this stuff out for free, guys. So anyone have any questions about how to retire early through real estate? I got you. I got you. I can help you. I can answer any questions you have on how to buy a property with no money down, how to negotiate a good deal, how to fix and flip, how to wholesale real estate, how to get started, how to save on taxes with real estate from my own experience, not tax advice, right? So my whole purpose of this channel and this platform is to help fellow streamers, fellow entrepreneurs save money. Save the money that they make through streaming, through content creation, and invest that money to help them retire early. That's the goal for everybody, right? All your favorite streamers out there, they're doing well, but next year, if the game changes, are they still going to do well, right? Like that's the question you ask yourself. So if you want to plan for the worst case scenario, you're going to plan for things not going well. And when you plan that way, then you're essentially hedging against things that could go wrong, right? So the main thing would be to buy or to invest in something that will appreciate in value over time, right? And also, if you don't have to pay for it, you know, your tenant is paying for the overhead, then that makes things even better, right? So I'm gonna clip a bunch of this stuff so you guys can kind of revert back to it.
Hell yeah, fucking dolphin diving.
Dude, are you serious? I just looked up there. I hate this game. Nah, bro. Nah, bro.